I only stopped by the apartment because I forgot my flash drive. I had no intention of staying more than 5 minutes. But the moment I turned the key and stepped inside, something felt off. It was quiet, too quiet. And then I heard his voice coming from the bedroom. At first, I thought he was on a work call. But then I heard her voice, a woman's voice, soft, familiar, and far too intimate for someone he'd call a colleague. That was the moment I knew something was wrong. But back then, just hours earlier, I was still the woman who would have fought anyone who dared to question my husband's loyalty. That morning had started like so many others. The sun was pouring through our kitchen window, catching on the floating specks of dust in the air. Our apartment in Chicago was small but warm, filled with quiet little details we'd picked together over 3 years of marriage. I was rushing, of course, stirring my coffee with one hand, shuffling through my work bag with the other. My final presentation was in less than 2 hours, and if I nailed it, I was going to be promoted to director of PR for my firm. "Ryan," I called out as I slipped into my blazer. "Have you seen my flash drive? The blue one." He appeared in the doorway with his usual effortless charm, tall, clean-shaven, still towel-drying his hair from his morning shower. "I think you left it on the side table last night," he said, crossing the room to kiss my cheek. "You nervous?" "Of course," I said, offering a tight smile. "If I can't convince the board today, someone else will take the job." "You'll crush it," he said, taking a sip of his coffee. "Besides, once my deal with the French clients goes through, we'll finally be able to take that ski trip you keep dreaming about. The Alps. Remember?" I smiled again, but something inside me tensed. Ryan had a way of always bringing things back to himself. My promotion had somehow turned into a footnote to his vacation plans. The phone rang just then. I almost didn't answer. My hands were full and I was already late. But when I saw the name flash on the screen, Janet Thompson, I paused. Ryan's mother's neighbor. She never called me directly. "Hi, Janet," I said, glancing at Ryan, who looked up, surprised. "Claire," she said gently, "I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this, but your mother-in-law, Margaret, she's had a stroke. The ambulance just took her to Ashwood General Hospital. She's stable but critical." The world around me tilted slightly. I handed Ryan the phone wordlessly. His face shifted from confusion to alarm to something I couldn't quite name. Panic? Or guilt? "I have to go," he said after the call. "But my investors are flying in this afternoon. I can't cancel on them, Claire. Not now." I stared at him. His mother was in the hospital, and he was thinking about investors. "I'll go," I said quietly. "She needs someone with her. I'll call Emily and have her take over my presentation." Ryan exhaled with visible relief. "Too quickly. Are you sure? This could cost you the promotion." I nodded, though my throat tightened. "Family comes first, right?" He wrapped his arms around me, burying his face in my hair. "I don't deserve you," he whispered. I left that afternoon on the 2:40 train to Ashwood, suitcase in hand and a gnawing feeling in my chest that I couldn't quite explain. At the time, I thought it was just worry for Margaret. I had no idea I was walking into the first step of unraveling my entire marriage. Ashwood was colder than I remembered. The kind of small town where everything feels like it's been paused in time. Rows of modest houses, cracked sidewalks, a pharmacy that still handwrites its signs. The cab driver dropped me off outside Margaret's duplex just before sunset. Janet was already waiting at the gate, holding a pale green umbrella and a worried expression. "You must be Claire," she said, offering a firm but kind handshake. "We spoke on the phone." I nodded. "Thank you for everything. I wasn't expecting this." "None of us were," she replied softly. "Margaret's at Ashwood General. I'll take you in the morning. You should rest tonight." Inside the house, everything smelled like lavender and old books. Margaret had always kept her place pristine. A widow for over a decade, She turned her home into a little shrine of order. Lace curtains, tea sets, framed photos of Ryan at every age. None of me, just him. Janet helped me settle in and left me with a thermos of herbal tea and a blanket. I stood alone in the guest room, watching the rain tap against the window. It was strange, being in this house without Ryan, caring for a woman who'd never truly accepted me, in a town that had always felt like it belonged to someone else's past. The next morning, the hospital's corridors smelled like antiseptic and resignation. Machines beeped faintly behind closed curtains. Margaret was in a private room at the end of the hall. She looked small, pale, tubes running from her arms, her left side nearly motionless. When I entered, she turned her head slightly and smiled. "You came?" she whispered, the words thick and slow. I forced a smile, stepping closer. "Of course. Ryan had to stay back. Work. But I'll be here, as long as you need." Her eyes welled with tears. Whether from gratitude or exhaustion, I didn't know. Over the next 2 weeks, my days fell into a numbing rhythm. Early mornings at the hospital, rehab meetings, errands, cooking simple meals, folding laundry. Margaret slowly regained her speech, though the left side of her body remained weak. The doctors said recovery would take months, maybe longer. Every night, Ryan called. He asked about his mother, never about me. He told me how the French deal was progressing, how the client was demanding, how proud he was of himself. He never once asked if I was sleeping, eating, coping. I told myself it didn't matter. "You're a good woman," Janet said one evening as we folded towels together. Too good, maybe. Ryan's lucky. I offered a polite laugh, but something twisted inside me. Lucky? Ryan hadn't even shown up. "He's busy," I said quietly. "Important project." Janet's face softened with a look I couldn't read. Part pity, part something else. That boy's been getting away with everything since he was in diapers. Margaret never said no to him, gave him everything. The rest of us watched and shook our heads. But she always believed he was destined for more. I didn't reply. I couldn't. Later that night, I sat on the edge of the guest bed, scrolling mindlessly through my phone. I wasn't looking for anything, just distraction. A break from the loop of hospital smells and polite nods and Ryan's endless voicemails. That's when I saw it. A photo posted by an old college friend, tagged at a trendy restaurant in downtown Chicago. The kind of place Ryan always said was too loud for him. But in the background, behind a sleek glass of red wine, was him. Ryan, laughing, leaning in close to a young woman with long blonde hair, her hand on his arm, their heads nearly touching. My breath caught. My fingers froze. No, it couldn't be, but it was. I stared at the photo, willing it to be a mistake. Maybe it wasn't him. Maybe it was just someone who looked like Ryan. Same build, same jawline, same annoyingly perfect posture. But the more I looked, the more my stomach tightened. His watch, the dimple in his left cheek, the cufflinks I gave him for our anniversary. It was him, no question. The woman next to him was young, maybe mid-20s. She leaned into him the way someone leans into someone familiar. Intimate, comfortable, not business. I zoomed in. Her fingers rested lightly on his forearm. Her nails painted a soft blush pink. His mouth was half open, like he was whispering something in her ear. She laughed. Her head tilted just slightly, and I felt a sharp stab of something I couldn't quite name. It wasn't jealousy. It wasn't even rage. It was worse. It was confirmation. He wasn't here because of work. He hadn't come because he didn't want to. I didn't sleep that night. I told Janet I was going back to Chicago for a day to grab some things. She didn't ask questions, just nodded and offered to bring Margaret some soup while I was gone. By the time I stepped off the train the next morning, I had a plan. Or at least I thought I did. I'd come home, quietly. I'd see him, ask some questions, give him a chance to tell the truth. Maybe in some twisted part of me, I wanted to be wrong. The apartment was spotless. Too spotless. The kind of clean that smells like citrus wipes in panic. On the coffee table was a vase of fresh lilies. I hadn't bought flowers in weeks. There were throw pillows on the couch I didn't recognize, bright geometric patterns that clashed with everything else, and 2 mugs in the sink, one with a lipstick stain, pale pink. I felt the calm wash over me, not real calm, but that numb, focused quiet that comes right before a storm. I set my bag down, walked into the kitchen, and spotted 2 plates drying in the rack. Both used, both recent. He was home. I could hear the shower running. I sat at the table and waited. When Ryan came out 10 minutes later, his hair was damp, his face clean-shaven. He wore sweatpants and a fitted t-shirt like it was any other Saturday. When he saw me, he flinched. "Claire," he said, caught mid-step. "I didn't expect you until this afternoon." "I took the early train," I said evenly. "Margaret needed some things. I thought I'd pick them up." He nodded slowly, watching me like a man trying to calculate how much I knew. "I grabbed some medicine for your cold," I added, gesturing to the bag I'd placed on the counter. "Though it doesn't look like you're that sick." He offered a weak smile. Must have been a 24-hour bug. I moved into the kitchen, noting the 2 mugs again. "Did you have someone over?" Ryan hesitated. "A colleague. We're working on the pitch for the French clients." She dropped off some notes. I turned slowly. "She wears lipstick." He blinked. "I guess. Didn't notice." "Her name?" "Samantha. From marketing." There it was. The lie delivered too fast. I didn't respond. Instead, I walked past him, straight into the bedroom. The bed was made, but on the nightstand, a bottle of unfamiliar perfume and a gold hair clip, glittering with fake stones. Tacky. Young. Not mine. I opened the closet. A few new blouses. A dress I didn't recognize. And in the drawer, lace underwear that definitely wasn't mine. That's when I heard it. Voices from the hallway. Ryan. And her. "I told you not to come today," he hissed. "She's home." "I forgot something," she replied, her voice sharp. How was I supposed to know she'd show up unannounced? "You said she'd be back in the afternoon." "Well, clearly she's not." There was a pause. Then she added, "I'm tired of this, Ryan. Of sneaking around. I'm pregnant." Everything inside me stopped. I stood frozen in the hallway, pressed against the wall as if somehow that would make me invisible. My ears rang. Her words kept echoing. "I'm pregnant." Ryan didn't respond immediately. I could hear him shifting, his voice low and tense. "Christina," he hissed, "not now." "You think I'm just going to disappear until it's convenient for you?" she snapped back. "You told me she'd be out of town for weeks. You said you were going to tell her." "I will," he muttered. "I just need time." My hands were shaking. I backed away from the door, trying to breathe. My heart was pounding so loudly I could barely hear anything else. I wasn't sure what scared me more, the betrayal or the way he talked about me, like I was an obstacle, a scheduling issue. I returned to the kitchen, sat down, and waited. I didn't want to hide anymore. I wanted him to see me. I wanted him to know I heard everything. The front door opened moments later. Ryan stepped in, closing it carefully behind him. He looked like a man walking into a courtroom, not a home. "She's gone," he said softly, not meeting my eyes. "I know," I said. He froze. "I heard everything, Ryan. The hallway isn't soundproof." His face tightened. He sat across from me, eyes flickering with calculation. "Claire, I was going to tell you. Don't." I cut him off. "Don't lie. Don't insult me any more than you already have." He swallowed hard. "It's complicated." "No, it's really not," I said. "You cheated on me. You brought her here, into our home, into our bed, and now she's pregnant." He looked down, his hands clasped. "You don't understand. I've been under pressure. With Mom, with work, you left. I was alone. I blinked. I left to take care of your dying mother. He flinched. I gave up the most important presentation of my career to be there for her. For you. And you. You were here playing house with someone barely out of college. I didn't plan for this to happen, he said quickly. It just did. I stared at him. Did she know you were married? She knew, he said, but she thought things were ending between us. Were they? I asked, my voice calm now. Were you planning to end things, Ryan? Or were you just hoping I'd keep playing nurse while you sorted out your little double life? He looked cornered, angry. It's not that simple. It is. We were interrupted by his phone vibrating on the table. He looked at the screen and frowned. It's the hospital, he said quietly. It's about Mom. I didn't move. Neither did he. For a moment, we were just two strangers sitting across from each other, the weight of everything unspoken pressing down on the room. He answered the call, and his expression changed instantly. What? When? A pause. Yes, of course. I'll be there. He hung up, pale. It's Mom. She's had a second stroke. They say it's worse this time. I stood numb. Then we should go. I'll drive, he said, already grabbing his keys. But as we stepped into the elevator, he turned to me and said, I don't need you turning this into a scene, Claire. Not now. I looked at him and saw, for the first time, exactly who he was, not a husband in crisis, but a man scrambling to protect an image he thought he still had control over. I'm not the one who created a scene, I said. I just finally stepped into it. We didn't speak again for the rest of the ride. Ashwood smelled like rain when we arrived, the kind that settles into the pavement and lingers in your clothes. Ryan didn't speak during the drive. His fingers clenched the steering wheel, his eyes fixed on the road like he could outrun what was waiting on the other end. We reached the hospital just after midnight. The lobby was dim, the fluorescent lights flickering overhead. Janet was in the waiting area, her hands wrapped around a styrofoam cup of vending machine coffee. She's stable, she said softly, standing up. But they say the second stroke was worse. Ryan asked a few questions, but it was clear Janet was speaking mostly to me. She's conscious, barely. They're keeping her under observation, but she asked for you, Claire. For me? I said, startled. Janet nodded. She said, Tell Claire I need to see her first. Ryan looked offended. She's my mother. Janet raised an eyebrow. And yet she asked for your wife. A nurse led me down the corridor, past a row of identical doors, until we reached the end of the hall. The room was quiet, save for the rhythmic beeping of machines and the gentle hiss of oxygen. Margaret lay still, her skin pale, eyes half-lidded. But when she saw me, something shifted in her expression, relief and shame. I walked in slowly, sitting by her side. Her hand twitched, and I reached out to hold it. She looked at me, eyes swimming with emotion. You saw him, she whispered, her voice hoarse and uneven. I nodded. You know. I do. Tears welled in her eyes. She blinked hard, trying to hold them back. I'm sorry, she rasped. I should have stopped it. Years ago, I let him become this. You couldn't have known, I said softly. I did, she whispered. After his father died, I gave him everything. No boundaries, no consequences. I wanted to protect him, but all I did was raise a man who thought the world owed him everything. She squeezed my hand weakly. Don't let him take you down with him. I swallowed the lump in my throat. What about you? What do you want me to do? She looked away, staring at the ceiling for a long moment. Then, slowly, she turned back. The apartment, the one in Chicago. It's yours now. I had the papers drawn up last month, before the first stroke. I just never told him. I stared at her, stunned. I watched you give up everything, she continued, her voice barely a whisper. Your job, your future, for me. Not for him. For me. And he didn't even bother to show up. I shook my head. Margaret, I didn't do it for a reward. I know, she said. That's why you deserve it. I felt tears finally break free, sliding down my cheeks. Are you sure? She closed her eyes, breathing shallow. I've never been more sure of anything. Just then, the door creaked open. Ryan stepped in, his face pale, eyes darting between us. They said I could come in. Margaret turned her face away from him. 5 minutes, she told the nurse without looking at him. For him, but only after Claire leaves. I stood, brushing his shoulder as I passed. He looked at me, eyes filled with confusion and something like fear. What did she say to you? He demanded. I didn't answer, because some truths don't need to be spoken out loud. They're felt, like weight lifting off your chest, like a door finally closing behind you. The courtroom felt colder than it should have. Or maybe it was just me, sitting beside my lawyer, back straight, palms damp, pretending I wasn't trembling beneath the surface. Across the aisle, Ryan sat with his attorney, looking polished, calculated. He didn't look at me. Not once. I was being sued by my own husband for emotional damage, for manipulating his mother in a time of weakness. He wanted the Chicago apartment back. He claimed Margaret hadn't been of sound mind when she signed the transfer of ownership. The irony was suffocating. Margaret wasn't there. She was still recovering in Ashwood, and even if she had been strong enough to attend, I doubted she would have sat quietly in the gallery while her son twisted reality into knots. The judge, a woman in her 50s with a sharp jawline and eyes like steel, asked for opening statements. Ryan's lawyer painted me as a schemer, said I'd swooped in during a medical crisis and turned a vulnerable old woman against her son, that I took advantage of grief and medication to gain property and power. I didn't flinch, but inside I burned. My attorney responded with calm precision. Your Honor, he said, we have notarized documents, video recordings, and multiple witnesses, both medical and personal, attesting to Margaret Morgan's full cognitive capacity at the time of the transfer. She was not confused. She was not pressured. She was disappointed. The judge turned to me. Mrs. Morgan, she said, can you tell the court in your own words why Margaret decided to transfer the apartment to you? I took a breath, a long one. Because she saw what I didn't want to see, I said softly, that I was sacrificing myself for someone who never truly valued me. While I was at her bedside, feeding her, changing her clothes, learning how to help her walk again, her son was living with another woman in our apartment. That woman is now pregnant. Margaret didn't give me the apartment out of pity. She gave it to me because, for once in her life, she wanted to do the right thing. There was a murmur in the courtroom. I kept my gaze steady. Ryan's attorney objected. This is hearsay. But the judge raised a hand. It speaks to motive. Overruled. Just then, the doors at the back of the courtroom opened. I turned and my heart stopped. It was Margaret, in a wheelchair, pushed by Janet, her posture frail but upright, her expression unwavering. Ryan stood up. Mom? What are you doing here? She ignored him. The judge allowed her to speak under oath, and when she reached the front, the room fell silent. I was not coerced, she said, her voice rough but clear. My mind was intact when I gave Claire that apartment, and I stand by it. My son has been lying. To you, to me, to himself. Claire gave up everything to care for me when he wouldn't lift a finger. She was my daughter when he stopped being my son. Ryan looked like he'd been slapped. How could you say that? He spat. After everything I've done for you? What you've done, Margaret replied coldly, is break every ounce of trust one had left. The judge leaned forward. Thank you, Mrs. Morgan. That will be all. It was over in less than 10 minutes after that. The apartment stayed in my name. The counterclaim was dismissed with prejudice. Ryan's face twisted, and for the first time in years, I saw him without his mask. He wasn't angry. He was exposed. He followed me out into the corridor. You planned all this, he hissed. You turned my own mother against me. I looked him dead in the eye. No, Ryan. You did that all by yourself. And I walked away, free. I didn't know how to start over. I just knew I had to. The apartment, the one Margaret gave me, felt too heavy with memories. Every corner still echoed with versions of myself I didn't want to revisit. So I packed a small suitcase, left the keys on the counter, and moved into a short-term rental near the lake. That's where Michael found me again. We'd only exchanged a few words before. He was the neighbor who'd helped me with my suitcase the day I left Ryan. Back then, he offered quiet kindness, the kind that didn't ask questions. But now, his name showed up in my inbox. Michael Carter, Crescent Media Group. He'd seen my resume online, said there was a new opening in PR at his company, and asked if I'd like to come in for an interview. At first, I thought it was pity. Then I realized it wasn't. It was respect. Your work for Technostar was solid, he said during the interview. We need someone who knows how to build trust back into a broken brand. Trust. That word hung in the air between us. I got the job. Michael never brought up my past. Not once. But over time, I found myself telling him anyway. Not because I needed to explain myself, but because I wanted someone to know me beyond the damage. He listened, really listened, and he never flinched. He had his own scars too. A widower. His daughter, Sophie, was 6. Bright, curious, always asking questions I didn't know how to answer. "Are you sad?" she asked me one day while we were having ice cream in the park. I hesitated. Sometimes. But I'm getting better. She nodded thoughtfully. My dad gets sad too. But when he cooks spaghetti, he smiles again. Maybe spaghetti is the cure. Maybe it was. Or maybe it was the way she leaned against him at bedtime, or the way he looked at her like she was the one holding his world together. Over time, dinners turned into weekends. Weekends into school runs. I found myself at their kitchen table helping with homework, watching movies on rainy nights, learning to breathe again. And Michael never pushed. He didn't need grand gestures. Just a cup of coffee waiting for me in the morning, a steady hand when I needed to cry, a laugh shared over something small and silly. One night, months after the court ruling, we stood on the balcony of his apartment watching the city lights shimmer across the lake. Sophie had fallen asleep with her favorite storybook still clutched in her hands. "I never thought I'd have this again," I whispered. Michael turned to me, his voice quiet. Neither did I. There was a pause, then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. "It's not an engagement ring," he said quickly, almost shy. "Just a promise that if you ever want a new beginning, I'll be there." Inside was a delicate silver ring with a tiny sapphire set in the center. Simple, honest. It didn't sparkle like the one Ryan gave me years ago, but it felt real, unshakable. I didn't cry. I smiled. And for the first time in what felt like forever, it wasn't forced. "I'm ready," I said. "Let's build something new." I thought I was done with Ryan. I had my own place now, a job I loved, people who made my life feel warm and solid again. Margaret was recovering steadily in Ashwood. Sophie was teaching me how to braid hair and draw unicorns. Michael, steady, kind Michael, was the first man I didn't feel the need to hide my fears from. But Ryan wasn't finished with me. It started with emails, then texts. "We need to talk. You ruined everything. I want what's mine back." I ignored them for weeks. Then one afternoon, as I was leaving work, I saw him standing outside the building. Same suit, same forced smile, but something in his eyes had changed. Something colder, more desperate. "You work for Carter now," he spat, stepping in front of me. "Seriously? You think that's not a slap in the face?" I didn't flinch. "I don't owe you anything, Ryan. Not a conversation. Not an explanation." "You turned my mother against me," he hissed. "You took everything." "No," I said calmly. "You lost everything. All I did was stop protecting you from yourself." He grabbed my arm. Hard. Before I could say a word, a voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Let her go." "Michael." He stepped forward, his presence quiet but firm. Ryan hesitated, then let go, backing away like a cornered animal. "You think you've won," he growled. "She's damaged. She'll never be enough." Michael didn't respond. He didn't have to. His hand found mine, and without another word, we walked away together. That night, I sat on the couch with Sophie curled against me, telling me about her day. She didn't ask about the man at my office. She just said, "You seem a little quieter than usual. Want some of my cookie?" I kissed the top of her head. "Yeah, I think I do." Weeks passed, then months. Ryan eventually stopped calling. Margaret sent a letter. Handwritten, shaky but powerful. "Thank you for letting me see the truth. You were never the problem, Claire. You were the mirror." It was the most painful compliment I'd ever received. Spring arrived. Sophie picked flowers in the park and tied them into little bunches, leaving them on my desk at home. Michael cooked dinner most nights. I helped with science projects. We laughed a lot, not because life was perfect, but because it was real. And one morning, as sunlight poured through the windows and the smell of coffee filled the kitchen, I realized something. I wasn't healing anymore. I was whole. I wore the sapphire ring on my right hand, not as a possession, but as a promise to myself, that I would never again make myself small for someone else's comfort. That love wasn't supposed to feel like walking on broken glass barefoot. Claire Morgan, the woman who once gave everything to a man who gave nothing, was gone. In her place stood someone new, someone stronger. And as I stood by the window, watching Sophie and Michael laughing in the backyard, I didn't feel the need to look back, because the future was already here.